Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. This is Neil with Portal to Ascension. Good to be with you all. Hope you all doing beautifully. And we're back live, and welcome back here. And today I'm excited because we're going to have not only someone new on Portal to Ascension, which, if you have been tuning into any of our events here, you know how much I love bringing on new people and really going into their work. But we're going to be speaking about some interesting topics as well. And as you can see, it's called the science of consciousness and sacred sites. So before we begin, just want to let you guys know if you are new to Portal to Ascension, first of all, we have a podcast as well. So this is live on our podcast. For our podcast listeners, you can check out our youtube.com/portal to ascension for this. For our YouTube people, we have an Instagram and Twitter. We actually have a podcast as well with over, I think it's like 300 episodes at this point. So you can tune in, listen to this while you're driving around too. And be sure to check out our website, portaltoascension.org, because on our website, if you sign up, you get a username and password, and we have hundreds of hours of free presentations. We've been creating events since 2008 and started the online university in 2016. And since then, I've been creating many events on a range of topics. And just by signing up at portaltoascension.org, you can go ahead and tune in and get a lot of that content for free and check out some of our upcoming events, such as you can see below here, the Ascension Glastonbury Conference is the next major live event that will be in the United Kingdom in a place called Glastonbury, beautiful area. It's the second annual one there, and check that out if you want to see who's going to be there. We got Magenta Pixie, Laura Eisenhower, Tim Tactics, Adam Apollo, and many other amazing people. And if you are able to come and join us live for 3 days or for the 6-day epic experience, because we have tours, we have post-conference workshops, please do. And if not, then you can tune in to the live stream as well. So let's go ahead and say hello in the chat. Let's get some engagement going. Always love to hear what you have to say. And as we're speaking today and talking to our guest, Dr. Lydia de Leon, probably, we're going to be going, I would love to take some questions from the audience if you guys have any, okay? So let's get into it. Today we have Dr. Lydia de Leon. She's a Greek architect and wellness coach with a focus on the relation of buildings on health and well-being. She holds a PhD in geobiology on the subject of the effect of geophysical anomalies on biology and is published in peer-reviewed journals and conferences. She also holds an MSc in sustainable environmental design, and she is a faculty member of the Resonance Academy with the course The Sacred Science of Ancient Temples. She's been researching for 15 years the relation of ancient temples and their location. And she is the author of the book, The Power of the Sacred Location, the creator of Healing Architecture, and the co-founder of the Geophilia Institute. And her website, geophilia.org. And I'll go ahead and post this for you guys here as well. So everybody, join me in welcoming Dr. Lydia. Hi, Lydia. Welcome.
Hi, Neil. Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
Thank you for being here. It's good to have you here too. I'd love to start out with, we're going to go into a lot of your research, your current research, but I'd love to start out with what your journey has been like. And something I love to know about people is, was there like a milestone moment in you that led to this awakening? Were there certain things that happened in your life that basically started bringing you to this awareness? Or was it a gradual thing, like your parents were not religious and they were open to it? So yeah, what was your story? How did you get to this point?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I knew I wanted to be an architect since I was very young, maybe 9 years old. I was always fascinated, but I have a Greek background, so I'm like from this incarnation, let's say I'm born and raised in Greece. I grew up with temples all around me, and I always found all these structures so fascinating. I was always looking at them as something complex, and I felt that there is far more to their design and their placement than we are being told. And so I had one of my moments of what you're asking was when I was in architecture school. One of my professors was and still is the head of restoration of the Parthenon. And so I had the honor at that time to get inside the Parthenon, which is not allowed by any normal public entrance. And so what I felt that there was nothing that I can really describe with words. It was a time that I was not yet in my spiritual path. I was not, let's say, in this awakening path, but what I felt was incredible. I felt like the moment I stepped inside, that I entered a different bubble. Something was different inside there. Something, the energy, the field. I literally felt that I was teletransported somewhere else. There was no other words I could describe it at that time. And so going through architecture and then visiting more temples, it gradually went to a point that I realized that this is a very complex technology and I wanted to look more into it. Another key moment was when I moved into a new apartment, and by new I mean it was freshly new built. And after a year of living there, I got extremely sick. And I put myself deeply into a research of how buildings and their structure and everything about them, from their material to their location, can affect our health. And I figured out many things about where I was living, and one of them was the location. It was built, the place was built where my bedroom was over underground water. I also had metal in my bed. There was formaldehyde for the new all the new furnishing. So I started taking off layer by layer things so I can get healthy again. And that I did. And from there, I just dedicated my life to really decoding the science of the ancient temples and how we can bring that into modern architecture, how it relates with the pre-cataclysmic civilizations, doing retreats in all these amazing places like Egypt and Mexico and all that. And this is really my mission, like helping people remember what are the real functions of these temples and bringing that technology to today.
Beautiful. And when you had the first experience, that at the, do you say it was the Pantheon in Greece? Is that what it was?
The Parthenon. The
Parthenon.
Parthenon in the
Yes,
Acropolis.
yes.
Yeah.
How old were you?
But inside the temple, right? Like literally inside.
Yeah, how old were you when that happened?
I was 19. I was just in
Okay.
the first year of architecture school here in Athens, which is a 5-year diploma.
Wow. So okay, so then you had that experience, and then you also had the experience when your health was being, you weren't doing too well, and you were in a building. So you started doing some research, right, in order to figure out how the structure and the architecture of the building, including what it's around, what's underneath it, can affect you. So that led you into a whole other world of sacred sites. But what was the spiritual connection there? Was that also what led you down the rabbit hole of looking into, like, you know, quantum physics, the nature of reality, consciousness? Was that all happen at the same time?
There are so many things that happen at the same time, and I'm just trying to pick, because we can go on for hours if I'm going to tell you like the whole thing. But yeah, when I was 21, I started a very deep spiritual path, and then Atlantis was always like, since I was in school, was like an enigma for me. So I was really, since that time, I was really questioning everything, and I was trying to figure out what was really happening in our ancient history. Is it what we're really told about, or is there more about it? But my experience in the Parthenon was really like a very important, let's say, a central part of the whole story, because at that time I didn't have the information about it, but I had the experience. So it was something that nobody could take from me. It's not something that I read in a book. So I knew there was something special about all this. So for me, my path has been like a dance in between all the spiritual aspects and esoteric aspects, and also the hermetica and all that. I have explored different paths, and also very deep into all the scientific aspect and all the unified physics. I've been collaborating with Nassim Haramein over 10 years. We brought him this year to Greece for a beautiful retreat. And I think this is all part of the puzzle. And we are all bringing a little piece into it, and we're building the bigger puzzle so we can see what is the bigger picture.
Yeah, 100%. I love this story because it's actually very unique. I've never really heard of a story of how art. I understand when some people can wake up to sacred sites and then they go into spiritual realm, but to be in school for architecture and then finding sacred sites in the same field that you were in for architecture, and that leading into a whole realm of spirituality is very interesting. And so I'm curious. I want to talk about the sacred sites. I want to talk about the Parthenon, and what is going on there and why you had that experience. But I would love to start with something else that's kind of connected but also different. You know, Thoth and we know Hermes, right? Thoth and Hermes, and a lot of people
Yes.
say that Hermes is the reincarnation of Thoth, or Hermes and Thoth are the same person, but the Greeks changed the name to Hermes, and then the emerald tablets of Thoth are Thoth's emerald tablets, but the Hermetica has the same terms in there. So I'd love for you to maybe. I feel like you might know some of this information. Could you break it down a little bit for us? What's the difference between Thoth and Hermes? Was this a hijacking of ancient information with a new name, or was there actually another person?
Yeah, great question. Actually, right now I'm reading again all the Hermetica from the ancient Greek texts and then in the modern Greek translation, and it's fascinating because every time you go into this text, there is another layer. I'm pretty sure that you will agree with me and many people listening. So, I personally believe that it's the same entity. It's the same spirit, if you like. Like looking in deeply into the emerald tablets, it's very clear that there are three main aspects of him. The first one is his Atlantean name, Vomalites Arlik, and the second one is Sothoth, which is the Egyptian name, or Jehuti as he was called in ancient Egypt. And then we have the ancient Greek name, which this is also something that I have been deeply researching, is the correct ancient Greek pronunciation. That's a whole other story for maybe another conversation. But that would be Hermes in ancient Greek. That's the correct name of the pronunciation. And so I personally think from all the research that he's exactly the same entity. And as he mentions, he goes deeply into the halls of Amenti, and there is a technology there through a special flower of light and then light and life. So there is the mention of the sacred geometry there. And there they can regenerate for 100 years, and then they can be 1,000 years with the body. So I think when they go back to regenerate, they have the possibility to change their form. And also, I think that there are cycles of, let's say, rise and fall of civilizations that these higher beings, they are, let's say, they are guarding in a way or guiding. And so at some point, I feel that the whole Egypt civilization just went to its close, that cycle, and then the Greek one was rising. So they kind of moved there, and then we have all the ancient Greek mythology, which I absolutely believe it's a real history. Like Tolkien says, history became legend, and legend became a myth. And so in all parts of these legends and stories, there is real history. I think it's the Atlantean history and the history of the Anunnaki, if you want. I think they're all connected. And so I feel they put their focus on a particular area at a time, also with the Mayas. So that's why I think there was the move of Thoth being called then Hermes, but it's just the same person.
Yeah, and rather than a reincarnation of the spirit, you're thinking that it could even be what was specified in the chambers, that basically the body was regenerated and then existed in another age,
Yeah,
right? That's quite
yeah,
possible.
yeah.
You know,
That's
you,
my
you mentioned
opinion.
you mentioned the rise and fall civilization, and when we look at the Yuga cycles, the whole 26,000 years plus or minus cycle of the evolution of conscious devolution, and we see Egypt, and we look at Egypt within that structure, we can see like the eventual fall of information, and from going from a higher level of consciousness to using external tools in order to achieve the same things, to a point of forgetfulness and amnesia. And now, when it comes to Greece, we see the Greek civilization rising, but was it rising in an elevated consciousness aspect, or was it within a lower age? Because I'm asking this because I think you may have told me before that you found information that Greek civilization goes back much further than what we've been told, and maybe it also kind of existed at a higher age as well. Because if we look at the conventional timing, that's all Kali Yuga, maybe a little bit of Dwarpa Yuga. That's not really like golden age information. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we did discuss about that before. There is evidence in different writings from ancient Greek texts that there was, for example, Athens, and the name Athena goes into pre-cataclysmic times. Also, Plato describes how Athens and the Acropolis was before the cataclysm and who was ruling here, like Kekrops, and he describes beings that are half human and half serpent. And there is a lot of details also in other texts. And one of the things that I find most fascinating, Neil, in the ancient Greek texts, and this is something that I'm sharing a lot in different retreats and courses, because I really think there is so much like important clues for us there, is that the ancient Greek writings, they say clearly that there was a time that there was no moon, and someone put it there, and they say that, they don't say who put it there. And they also name 3 specific cataclysms, and they have the name of the cataclysm, and they say what exactly happened. And I have been combining these ancient Greek texts with Edgar Cayce's information on Atlantis, and he mentions exactly 3 cataclysms. Now, I'm not saying there were no other cataclysms before. I'm just saying that these cataclysms are the closest ones to our era, right? And according to Casey, we have, of course, the one that is 9,600 BC, more or less. We have the previous one at 28,000 BC, and the previous one in 50,000 BC. So in the ancient Greek text, we do have quite a lot of information. I haven't been able yet to pinpoint at what time was the moon placed. I'm really looking into it. But I think personally that, and I've been discussing that with Nassim also, because we were talking in the Greece retreat that actually the Earth in the past was smaller, and so the gravitational field of the Earth was different. And so when you place a moon, that's what we were discussing in the trip, when you place a moon, what will happen is that the gravitational field will be reduced. And of course, when you place such a huge object, you alter the gravitational field, and you alter a lot of things that can lead itself to a cataclysm. So I think one of the cataclysms is really connected to the placement of the moon. And all these things also link in with the rise and fall of civilizations.
Yes, man, it's a whole rabbit hole here to go down now. Because honestly, my one of my favorite topics is the moon, and just like what is the moon kind of topic. I'm actually doing a conference next year called Moon, Mars, Anomalies, and Inner Earth. It's a whole conference on Moon and Mars and Inner Earth. If you find information, if you want to be a part of it, do some more research and come on it. That'd be great. But when it comes to the moon
Sure,
and it
I
being
would love to.
there, okay, let's do it. I would love to have you on. So, okay, let's speak about the moon for a second, just because it's such an interesting topic. When it got placed there, and then do you think that it could potentially, because they say the moon keeps us in a tidal lock on Earth, right? Also assists with the tilt, right? So, do you think that it could have been placed there in order to maybe keep us at a specific frequency range? Have you ever heard of the Saturn moon matrix and how this supposed relationship between Saturn and the moon creates some sort of frequency on planet Earth that keeps us within a specific bandwidth? Are you familiar with any of that?
Yes, I am. And there is a lot of, let's say, groups that I have been in contact with. And I do find there is a lot of fear mongering, which I don't agree personally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, the moon is the worst. It's there to control us. It's there to, you know, all these things. And honestly, I just don't resonate with that. I'm not sure
Okay.
exactly why it's placed there. I'm really digging into it. I really feel that there is something it needs to be controlled. So maybe that was the gravitational field. I do believe absolutely. And, you know, in another talk or in a conference, I can share with the audience, like all the ancient Greek writings about, for example, writers that say specifically that there are huge buildings on the moon. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure there are beings there. I'm sure that is the base there. Now, even if it's placed to hold us in a specific frequency, I feel that everywhere in the universe there is hierarchy. And to go from one level to the next, you have to pass through a portal or a gate. And by that, I don't mean now a physical only portal. I mean an energetical portal in a way of getting tested and really conquering that level and then going to the next one. So if it's even there to keep us in a lower frequency so that we never evolve and we're always here, even if that worst case scenario is true, for me that's a test, and it's a test for us that we need to really go through that and above that. And we have the option, we have the possibility, the tools are there, the teachers and the wisdom is there. The only thing for us is the choice to not be in fear. And personally I feel that this earth school, I really feel it's a school here that we are meant to go, from the one level to the next. One of the
Mhm.
main things we're here to conquer is to not be in fear, but to be in love
Mhm.
frequency.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And on what you just said about the moon and the Saturn, that's exactly my belief as well. Is that rather than it being, when we have amnesia and we don't remember why these things are put in place for ourselves, we're just kind of coming up with reasons and speculating upon it. But I feel like the if this is the case, the Saturn and the moon are doing these things together, it's giving us the opportunity to grow. It's giving us the opportunity to have
Exactly.
experiences that we signed up for. It's also giving Source the opportunity experiencing something other than just being one with Source on a whole other level of experience, and which is which is interesting because a lot of people, we have Saturn, we have Satan coming from Saturn, we have the shadow work coming from Saturn, we have the dark night of the soul, the Saturn's return, all dark stuff that isn't really dark stuff. It's the darkness that we need to confront,
It's
right?
not.
Yeah,
It's not. I would not call it dark stuff. It's
yeah,
milestones that we all have to cross for our next level of evolution. And personally,
right.
I
The
believe
catalyst.
what has been happening the last few years, with the pandemic and all these things, it's another test for humanity. And we all have to go through it. And we have to choose whether we resonate with fear or with love.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely want to get to ancient sites soon, but I want to ask one more question. I would love to know because when it comes to Atlantis, obviously most of what we know comes from Plato, right? And he's the one that even used the words Atlantis. Who knows what the Atlanteans actually call themselves? And even when in Plato's description, he speaks about, I think, Athenians. He speaks about people as if there were Greeks living in Atlantis, right? Now, I know that a lot of ancient cultures talk about stories 100, 200,000 years ago, and they use their own city states because that makes it more relatable. So I'm curious, what do you feel? Why do you think there's such a huge Greek connection to Atlantis? And why are we using Greek names to explain the people there, including Atlas, which is also used in Greece, the king of Atlantis? Have you ever considered any of that? I mean,
Yeah.
being from Greece, I was wondering. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, great question. I mean, I love the topic of Atlantis. I can go into it, and just so much there. So, personally, my opinion is that the root word Atl, which is the root word of Atlantis and Atlas and all that, it doesn't have to be Greek by default, right? I think that was the root, maybe one of the root names in the Atlantean language, and that spread out in different places, one of them being Greece. And then we also have that with the Mayans. And we have Aztlan. They use exactly the same word, that their home was somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, an island that was devoured by a huge cataclysm. And then the gods from there came and they created their colonies in Yucatan, in Guatemala. And if you read the Chilambalam, they say that explicitly. So I find that, let's say, connection fascinating because it's exactly the same root. So I don't think it's only Greek. Of course, until now, we haven't found anything similar in Egypt because in Egypt, Atlantis is called the island of the blessed. We do have a similar, exactly, actually, it's not similar, it's exactly the same words in ancient Greek in mythology. We have the Isle of the Blessed, and they are all talking about the same thing. And so I think because of one of the first, if not the first ruler himself, would have been Atlas or Atlan, as Casey mentions here. I think the common root is there. And then according to what language it went to, it cut a little bit different, right? Like Aztlan or Atlan or Atlas. And so I think Greece was one of the places where the gods had, or these advanced beings, they had a lot of things played out for them after the destruction of their island. And so they came, we know that they came to Egypt, we know that they came to Greece, we know that they came into the Maya lands. And so all these places are colonies. And that's why there's so much feeling about, oh, let's go to Greece because part of Atlantis still lives there because there were these colonies that existed.
Right,
That's
right.
that's my view on it.
Man, it's so interesting because like we have um we have so many of the similar gods in Greece than we do in India, right? Like Indra is Zeus, Saraswati is Athena. List goes on and on and on. Except the Indians have way more gods, um, and so there was like this culture, and it could have been the Yamina culture, which was the one of the Proto-Indo-European cultures that went south, and they split, going towards Greece and Anatolia, and going towards the Indus Valley civilization. And then we have Atlantis, which is on the other side of the world, with something going on over there that possibly combined with that culture. It just boggles my mind, like how all these migrations happened and who interacted with who. So not neither here or there with that little statement right there, but I just feel it's just so beautiful, just the diversity of all the migrations that have taken place, and we have just interbred and crossed over, and culture has mixed and mixed and mixed so many thousands of years. It's very challenging to really pinpoint how this all went down. Maybe one day we
Yeah,
will.
absolutely.
So yeah.
I think we will.
So that was like I'm feeling the need for out of left field question. So if you, and we'll get into the sacred sites next. If you had a superpower, okay, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. I have actually thought this question many times. It's so difficult to pick because there are quite a few that I like. I don't know. I think my first choice would be teleportation.
Ah, that's my first choice too. Actually, my second one is time
Really?
travel.
Okay.
Time travel is second.
Yeah. Most probably
Yeah,
mine would be that the second one. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's so funny. All right, so I'd love to get now into speaking about sacred sites and science, but let's start with the Parthenon. Can you maybe explain a little bit more what happened there, and did you ever go back to do some research on what was the structure, what was actually happening in the structure that provided you with the experience you had, and what do you feel was the intention for the structure in previous generations when it was in use?
So where to start? There's so many things there. Um, yeah, this year in the retreat we did with Nassim, I did a whole hour just on the Parthenon with all the scientific details. I will share a few now with you, and everybody was mind blown because this information is not out there. Even Nassim himself, he told me I had no idea that it has all these extremely complex technology to it, and where to start. So first of all, the whole Acropolis hill is built on quartz. Like the whole hill is literally we walked with the group there and I was showing them, and you literally see the crystals coming out. Now, why is that important for the people that are new to this? Quartz crystal has a very specific property, and that is the piezoelectric phenomenon, which means that it's dual. So the first part is that when any crystal is compressed, it produces charge, it produces electricity, and that creates what we call, and what I called in my PhD that I turned into a book later, it's a geophysical anomaly. What is that? Is an area basically where the fields of the earth have a big shift, either a higher value or a much lower value. And so imagine the whole hill with the mass it has and the weight it has. First of all the pressure that is created is literally creating that effect in the quartz crystal, and that by itself is creating electrical charge. So by default, the place itself has a very important geology and geophysics into it. It's not just that is, you know, a hill that is extruding, because they wouldn't choose it only for that. Now, also Plato mentions that the Acropolis was as a plateau, right? It was far bigger, like many times bigger from what we see today. And most of it was destroyed with the Cataclysm. So we have that information. Regarding now the design of the Parthenon itself, um, there are so many aspects to it. First of all, it's built with or Pentelicon marble. Penteli is an area here in the suburbs of Athens that it's like world known for its marble. And of course, the marble is white. It has far less like all these little patterns that usually marble has. So it's far like purer in terms of its composition. But what most people don't know, it's one of the highest marbles in the world in quartz. So actually, the mine itself, where it comes from, is a geophysical anomaly itself. It's an earthquake zone. And actually, it's a place that many paranormal phenomena happen in the Penteli area. There are UFO sightings. There are other like crazy things that you leave your car in a road that goes downwards and the car will go upwards because of the magnetic anomaly that is there. So the material itself comes from a place that is supercharged. And then you have all the geometry. Something that people might not know is that the Parthenon is built like a pyramid. So if you extrude all the edges and all the columns, it will meet in a height, and that height creates a pyramid that is exactly half of the volume of the Great Pyramid of Giza. I cannot think that this is a coincidence, personally.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, of course, there is archaeoastronomical alignments, and there is very complex design because there is no one single straight line in the Parthenon.
Wow. No one single straight line. What do you feel
No,
the experiences were that people were getting from it? And do you think that they were following some sort of sacred geometry, or they were like looking at Egypt and making things similar to Egypt?
I think that the knowledge was also here in the pre-cataclysmic Greece, and I think that was passed on to some of the more initiated people and the priests and the philosophers. And of course, I think Egypt was very important in terms of being like a sanctuary for this esoteric knowledge. Absolutely. The golden ratio that was, for example, used extensively in the Parthenon, it's a very important ratio in unified physics. We know that. We know that this is the way the universe is held together, thanks to the work of Nassim Haramein and Dan Winter and some other incredible people. And we know that this is the way that we go from one scale to the smaller, also to the bigger. And that's why it's something important to use in what we call the mesocosm, which is the middle part, right? We have the microcosm, which is the very, very small, like the quantum level, and the very, very big, which is the cosmic scale. And then we are in the middle. So when you bring that in the middle scale, what you do is that you unify all scales. You create structures that reverberate or vibrate with the way the universe designs. So there is an absolute continuation.
Right. And you mentioning crystal quartz being basically crushed, I guess, for lack of a better term, with the weight of the structure, creating an electrical current, right? And then we also see in Egypt, a lot of people speculating now that the pyramids seem to have multiple usages, maybe even communication. But one is a power generating device, electrical generating device. What do you
Yeah,
feel the purpose was for this electricity? Well, why were they attempting to create electrical current with the Parthenon?
great question. This has been the focus of my research that led me to the PhD and everything else that I'm doing and creating a protocol for measuring temples, right? And so personally, I have decoded at least 4 functions for ancient temples that I can back up with science. And there are a couple more that I do believe they're true, but I cannot back them up yet with science. So um, that was the question that you said was exactly my question when I was looking at temples all around the world. Why on earth are they all placed in all these kinds of geophysical anomalies? And there are many kinds of geophysical anomalies. One of them being an electric anomaly that has to do with quartz. Another one is the presence of underground water. And the Parthenon is built because on underground water because there are springs exactly inside the rock. And they are known and they are written in the literature. Exactly the same way the Great Pyramid is built on an extensive network of aquifers and is just literally taking all that electric charge. This is what happens when water comes into contact with material that is high in chalk. In a very simple way to say that, what is created is that the water loses electrons, and so it's left positively charged, and then the rock is left negatively charged, and these two create electricity. That caused me to kind of be kicked out from my university in the first one that I was doing my PhD because the director of the Department of Geophysics wouldn't accept that underground water can have a charge. He was telling me that I have all this bookshelf of all my teachers and the people behind me, and underground water is always neutral charge. And that was a huge conflict that ended up me having to get out of there and find another university and trying to finish my PhD, which I did at the end, but it was a
Wow.
whole very difficult situation. So the what were the reasons for picking these places and needing this power charge? So for me, first of all, one reason was to create what we call altered states of consciousness or mystical experiences, because there is a ton of research that actually shows that that creates micro seizures in the brain that actually creates out of body experiences, meaning you literally leave your body or you have a connection with presences of other beings, and that's very well registered in the bibliography. And for example, I think most temples, if all, have that function, including the Great Pyramid. And that's also mentioned in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. But if you enter the chamber and you stay there, you will be initiated. And that's with achieving outer states and communing with beings that are of higher frequency. But that's all also backed up with all the science. It's not just an idea of what I'm sharing right now. The second one is absolutely for healing, and the temples were functioning as a bioresonance device. I'm pretty sure most of you listening here that you have heard the word bioresonance, which is basically healing with electromagnetic frequencies. The only difference with all these functions is that it has to be on a short dosage. These places are not meant for us to be there all day, every day. The same way you don't stay in a bioresonance device all day. You take a healing and then you use that and then you go back at some point. And so I personally feel that maybe very advanced beings that can handle that charge and that intensity of the temples, because it's not only their location, is that the material they use and the geometry they use and all that technology they have is meant to amplify that in a very intense way. Another function is seed growth enhancement, and that's why there have been so many seeds found, for example, in pyramids in different places in the world. Why was that important? Because you cannot achieve a dedication to a spiritual path if the basic needs of a population are not taken care of. So there was abundance of food because they were charging the seeds with this electromagnetic charge of the temples and the sacred geometry that goes with it and all that. And so these were important. And of course, there is the energy generation function that I absolutely agree. And the Great Pyramid that has been studied in many ways. And if you look at all the decoding I've done with the three main parameters that the temples are created, it's absolutely proved, like scientifically, that they were literally creating, in my opinion, an energy grid around the earth that was like literally what Tesla wanted to do. And Tesla writes, that when you want to create that free energy or just literally channel the energy that is already there, if you want to call it the energy of the earth or the ether, it's all the same at the end. but you have to grip the earth, he says. He placed his tower exactly over an aquifer. He knew exactly what he was doing. But I think that there were far many structures in a golden age, long time ago, that they were absolutely creating that energy for everyone in the most, healthy and harmonic way that we are pretty far from today, in my opinion.
Yes, definitely. I have lots of questions here and lots of follow up from what you're saying. So looks like this show is going to go a little longer than originally intended because we got to go deep, okay? And I just want to take a moment here because some people have joined us in the last few minutes. They might not know where we're at, so I want to just recap to everybody joining in and welcome everybody tuning in here. If you're catching us in the middle, we started by speaking about ancient Greek history. We spoke a little bit about Atlantis. Spoke about Dr. Lydia's work and how she got into this, being going to school for architecture, and then waking up to when she was sick, waking up to what is the structure and what are the properties of the building, what's around me, that led her into exploring sacred sites and structure and building, taking her architecture to a whole other level. And now we're going into the science of sacred sites. So just to recap real quick, we've been speaking a lot about the Parthenon and the geometry and the sacred geometry around it, and that fact that the Parthenon has been built on crystal quartz, and with the weight of the Parthenon creating an electrical current. And now we're speaking about the different properties and things that can come from it. And so this is a great segue, Lydia, to the conversation we had when we first met, because you said to me when I said ley lines, and you said, well, you're not saying ley lines don't exist, but you're saying there's no real scientific evidence on it because you love to utilize science. For example, these crystal quartz are having an actual phenomena happening through this weight on top of it, in order to prove the consciousness of the universe and the world. So a lot of people say that Egypt is on a ley line, which is why the pyramids were built there. But we're getting into a reality now that maybe these ancients had some sort of tools to know where on the earth specific things were that they could utilize in order to amplify and harness, right? So when it comes to Egypt, can you speak a little bit about just ley lines in general? And then was Egypt built around just the aquifers, or is there something even more scientific or about that specific location for that civilization to have existed?
So, in general, about ley lines, what I like to say is people like we don't have a common definition. That's what I say usually when I am with people that are researchers of the same subject. We have to give like a definition. So when we're talking about ley lines, we all have a common language, right? We're not referring to different things. Now, I personally believe that there is a grid that has nodal points around the Earth, and there are specific nodes that are very important, and these nodes are either taken and they're that's where the ancient civilizations constructed temples, or there can be, in case of Mexico for example, there can be like a volcano. Like, there are energy points that are very important and they're very intense, and I think the ancient civilizations knew about that grid and they were utilizing it for their free energy technology. And also, I absolutely believe that, and I always share that this temple grid, this ancient temple grid, was also used to keep the planet in a very high frequency. And I think since that grid has fallen, also our, like, as humanity, as a planet, our consciousness has fallen. And part of my mission is to reactivate this temple grid. This is what I'm doing in all the retreats, and I do a free event 4 times a year in the equinox and the solstices, and we do that in a 12 temple grid complex around the earth, every time different temples. And I'm very passionate about that, and I believe also we need to build new temples, which is what we are doing with Arturo, my husband, who's also a holistic architect. And I really believe we need to bring back this temple grid so we can access again on this world, on this planet, that we are given all these higher states that the ancient civilizations were able to access. And I think that's very important part of getting out of the Kali Yuga that you mentioned before, and
Yeah.
like going to higher states of civilization.
Right. My theory is, and I'd love for you to give me your input, what your feedback is on this, and if this connects with you. And this theory is kind of shifting now because now I'm realizing that after spending a month in Egypt last September, that that these structures are used for many different things, not just keeping us at this
Yeah.
higher frequency, right? And so, but my theory before that is morphing, but still some of it's still around, is that we're at a higher level of consciousness. The planet was just in this frequency, this vibration, because of the cycles of time, the alignments in the stars, whatever. And then we started falling from grace, right? The epic fall from grace, the biblical fall. And as we were falling, um, we started losing certain gifts and tools, telepathy, different things like that. And then tools were made in order to do what we were normally able to do within ourselves without needing external tools. And then maybe there was some sort of joint force around the planet to create a grid work because they wanted to stop the planet from lowering in frequency. And maybe the worldwide pyramid culture was designed to keep us at a certain harmonic so that we wouldn't fall even further. But then we see a shutting down of pyramids that was inevitable, that even these beings that try to keep us there, they couldn't stop us from falling because we had to fall. And that's why we see at some pyramids, for example, like the Red Pyramid, we see an explosion inside the pyramid that all of a sudden, and as Brian Forrester says, that looks like it happened 9,600 BCE, right? That there was an explosion, these things started shutting down. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're sharing. And as I said, I really believe it was one of the most important aspects of helping the planet to be kept in the highest frequency possible. And on the other side, I also believe that everything in the universe, at least the material universe we live in, is cyclical. So we inevitably need to go through all these cycles. And also, astrology shows us that there are also cycles. There are cycles that there are bigger cycles. Everything is cycles in between cycles, right? We all know that. Like everything rotates, everything spins, and we have all these cyclical phases in our also in our lives, in our own lifetimes. And what I have discovered is that this is like a wave, right? There is a peak, and then you go down, and then you reach the bottom, and then you go up. So, from what I've been researching, and I've also been into astrology since I was very young, and I absolutely believe that was one of their high sciences in this advanced civilization. Only that today I feel we know about 30% to 40 max of what the real astrology is. That's why sometimes it feels like, oh, this is off, or it didn't work, or the prediction was off, because our frequency is low, and we are not yet able to access that whole science that astrology is. Why I'm mentioning that is because I don't feel we can like stop the cycles. Like we will always go, at least on this planet, through these different phases. But what we can change is the amplitude of the wave. So when we enter the golden age and we are going upwards, where the peak is up to us. The peak can be here or it can be up here. And the same with the bottom. When we enter the phase that goes downwards, it's up to us if the bottom is just here and it's a very soft curve, or it goes really down. And so the knowledge, first of all, and the awareness of the cycle of where we are in the bigger aspect of it, like the 26,000 year, and then there are smaller cycles, and then we also have even smaller cycles in our own lifetime, helps us make the best choices as much as we can humanly possible, so we can shift that amplitude of the peak into a higher one and minimize the bottom amplitude.
Yeah. It's beautifully said. So I want to get back to Egypt now. I want to talk about the King's Chamber and Saqqara, right? So King's Chamber, spent some time in it, and has some beautiful private experiences, and it was probably one of the most tangible experiences of consciousness that I've ever had. And we were chanting in there one time, We're with the Hertax, and the Hertax have the keys of Enoch, where where the Hertax have all these specific tones that he channeled while he was in the pyramid back in the 80s, I believe, when he had Enoch come through to him. And wow, I saw like a dragon come in. It was just phenomenal. And I'm curious what you think that chamber was for. It looks like it could have been utilized for a healing chamber just because of the healing a lot of people received in there. And then also, if you could speak on, I think it's Saqqara, the place where they have all those sarcophaguses, those huge boxes. Is that Saqqara, right? The underground base,
That's
right?
the Serapeum. That's the
The
Serapeum,
Serapeum, yeah,
yes.
and that's connected. It seems like almost like a computer grid to the Great Pyramid. Almost like there's like might be energy currents coming from the Great Pyramid to that. Almost like the pyramids were a battery, and this was the collection of energy, right, in those structures. What do you feel they were for? What was the King's Chamber for? What's your experience with it, and what about the Serapeum?
So yeah, our last time was we went last year. We did a retreat in Egypt. It was really such an initiation. I'm just talking about myself, and yeah, it's such a magical place. And all these places, in my opinion, they're meant to be experienced several times, and every time there is another layer to it. Now, regarding the Great Pyramid, for example, on the chamber in there. I absolutely feel, and also the scientific backup that I mentioned before, is that it has, first of all, it has multiple functions. I am absolutely sure about that. One of them being absolutely for healing. So you have the whole Great Pyramid that encodes so many incredible proportions and phi ratios and so many things that are encoded there, and it's absolutely in resonance with the, like, literally the size of the planet. It's placed on the gravitational center of the planet, and so on and so forth. And you have an insulating layer of limestone outside, a conductive layer inside. You have a huge aquifer in the bottom that is charging the whole thing. And then you have, in the core of it, you have a full megalithic granite construction, which is the whole chamber itself and the sarcophagus itself. And what granite does is that it's, first of all, it's absolutely conductive. So imagine all the electricity that is coming from the earth is protected to be lost outwards, because the outside layer of the casing stones was an insulating type of limestone. It's kept inside with the conductive layer, and then it's even more conducted. And let's say granite itself also creates a very powerful electromagnetic field, not only conducts the one that is existing. So it's such a powerful device in there. And for the, specifically for the king's chamber, I think it's a bioresonance device. It's a healing device. It's a place where, when you enter, is meant to create altered states of consciousness. So you can receive answers, you can receive guidance, you can commune with beings that are of a higher frequency. All that at the same time. And there is another aspect to it, is that if you read in the Bible about the dimensions that are given about the Ark of the Covenant, that, from all the research that I've been diving into, it was one of the free energy devices, and there are many around the planet. We know that there are 6 right now in the US stored in a vault, but there are more in the Vatican, and who knows how many more there are that are just kept in secret. And if you check the dimensions, they precisely fit inside the sarcophagus, which is not a sarcophagus. So I think another layer of it was that an energy device would go in there, and that would maybe activate even further that energy grid that they're creating. So energy generation. And also, Edgar Casey mentions about this 6-fold geometry of crystals that the Atlanteans had, which is exactly what Nassim is recreating now for us. The crystals that he has are doing exactly that, only he hasn't completed the entire thing the way it was. He's on the way there. But what he has created is already incredible. And, when you bring back the crystals in the temples, there is something incredible that happens. And there are energy emanations that have been photographed when that happens. And, we put the art crystals inside the sarcophagus. And so there is a whole link with all these different layers. And that's how we absolutely know that this is advanced technology, because even the functions of it, there are so many different functions and layers. It's like an incredible technology that I can tell you as an architect, we don't have the technology to recreate that today, nor even the Parthenon. None of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Right, right. Oh my God, it's the Egypt in general is just incredible. But when you go inside the main pyramid and you see the king's chamber and the way that whole thing is structured and everything you just outlined, what Robert Grant speaks about as well, about all the different ratios and everything, it's genius. Straight up, like
And also
I can't.
something that
Yeah,
many people don't know, also I forgot to mention, is that underneath the Great Pyramid, there are other
uh-huh.
chambers that are not yet open and they're kind of filled with water. I don't know if you know
Yeah.
about that. And there are more sarcophagi under there that are exactly
Below,
the same as the
below.
ones that are found in the
Okay,
Serapeum.
you're saying below the queen's chamber, further down.
No, no, below the pyramid.
Yeah.
There are people that have gone into there and they have shown me pictures and they have even taken samples of the water that is under there because it's flooded. And that
Yeah.
water is salt water. And they cannot find an explanation why this water is not from the Nile, but it's actually salt water from the sea. So there has to be a connection. That's a whole other story, but there is far more to Egypt. I think we really know
Oh,
such a small percentage of really what is going on in Egypt. And also, I think there
yeah.
are so many things hidden in the desert that need to be absolutely explored.
100%. The least excavated place on the planet is the Sahara Desert. They because 13,000 years ago when it was a lush oasis, we were technically primitive. So why go ahead and look there? That's one of the reasons. But we have lidar now, and I'm sure they found all types of things. And actually, I have a whole presentation I'm working on Sahara Desert anomalies, and it's specifically about, like, I feel a lot of things we're going to figure out about our ancient history are lost in the desert. You know, Egypt spanned. I
Absolutely.
feel like the civilization probably expand all over North Africa. So much happened there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So before we get into another place, another topic here, also just want to drill home one more thing about Egypt. You know, when I see Egypt and the artwork, it's just I just see like the level of genius that humanity can be at. Even like the Thoth and his staff in every single hieroglyph. So every hieroglyph, when Thoth is holding his staff, it's at 23.5 degrees, the same as the tilt of Earth. You know, and the distance between, because he has two staffs, and the distance between the two staffs is the same. That's the distance of the compass, and the same distance on the Masonic symbol. And the Masonic symbol is actually Thoth's staff at 23.5 degrees. You know, it's like all these connections. It seems to me that these individuals were operating left and right hemisphere at the same capacity. They were creating beautiful, beautiful, amazing artwork coded with the most advanced physics of the universe, right?
Absolutely. And there is one detail that I don't know if people have noticed when going to Egypt is that the staffs never touch the floor. There is always a distance, which means, there is nothing like, oh, it's a walking stick or is whatever. It's obvious that it's an energy device that cannot touch the floor because it may be discharged or whatever. It can happen through that. So they're
Yeah,
always holding it and they're always a distance from the ground.
right. Amazing. All right, so moving on, I would love to know if you know anything about 110 hertz frequency, because it seems like there's a lot of ancient sites around the world that are emanating this, including the County Mead in Ireland, which is a place I really want to go visit, and the caves in Malta, plus in Egypt, other places are emanating this frequency. Have you heard of it?
I actually have a mention in all the research that I've done in the online course and in the book about that, what exactly you're mentioning. And 110 frequency hertz, it has been already proven in the laboratory when it was replicated that it creates a right hemispheric dominance and a frontal lobe dominance. So there is something very curious about it. And there is absolutely research that backs that up. And that's why I created all this protocol to measure, with all these different devices, temples around the world, starting with Greece, because I'm from here, and we managed to take the permit of ancient Greek temples, 50 in the number, and we are in the process of getting the funding and everything. And we want, one of the measurements is measuring people and with different biofeedback, and actually checking what happens with the brain waves and all that. And we want to have results from temples around the world, and there we can really have comparative data, because now there are data that are like individual. And on another note, we are embarking on an adventure in October with Matthew Lacroix and Brian Forster, and we're going to be doing these part of these measurements in some temples in Turkey and in Menorca, and I'm very excited about that. So we're going to have more and more data, and that's something that is so dear to my heart. Like literally bringing out measurements on the ground and on people of what these temples are really doing.
Wow, that's beautiful. I would love to have you and Matthew back on to discuss this after you do this, if you guys are open to it, because I love
Sure,
Matthew's work. I
sure.
follow Matthew on YouTube. I saw him post about you, introduce you to his community. Yeah, so that's beautiful.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing. And
Uh
I
huh.
so appreciate all his such in-depth work that he has done to put all the ancient
Right.
texts together. For me, it's mind-blowing. And I have been in the same path, but I haven't devoted so much time and energy in the tablets and all that. And I so appreciate it. It was just really mind-blowing for me to read his books. And I absolutely
Hmm.
align with what he shares. And so, from our side, me and Arturo, we do the measurements, we do the sacred geometry decoding. Arturo is an expert in sacred geometry, and so we let's say complement each other very nicely on this expedition. And this is like a common vision, because I already have that page on our website about creating a documentary, creating peer-reviewed papers. I want to do both, and
Yeah,
so it's happening.
that's so beautiful. I'm really happy for you, and I'm honestly happy for the world because you guys are gonna do some cool stuff together. You know, this is next level. Yeah.
It's
So
time that this information comes out there. Like when we have
yeah.
like a documentary that has the visuals and can reach out to people that are not so much in the science, but then we have also the scientific aspect. There is nothing more to say about it, because you're covering both sides. And I think that's exactly the time that this information is ready to come out. I think it's really everything that is fake and is of this Kali Yuga era is collapsing already, and we see it. So the light and the truth is coming out. I really believe that. I'm not the most optimistic person in the world, I have to say that, but I do see that shift. I don't know what else we're going to live on our lifetime, but people
Yeah.
like you, Neil, that you're doing so amazing effort, and you just are so dedicated in your mission in bringing so much information to the people to help them awaken. People like Matthew, like Brian, like all these team, like now it's happening. Now is the
Yeah.
time.
It is a time. There's a place for belief and faith and just a knowingness, and then there's also it's also valid to appease your linear mind through evidence and information. You know, and as I got into this world, when I first started, actually my first video that I ever watched, believe it or not, was a 12-hour video on the Sea of Hermes in 2001 on the Ark of the Covenant. That's what got me into everything.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then I found Jordan Maxwell, William Henry, all at the same time. So, and then when I started doing these events, like I would be going around, like I was like 23, 24, and I would be going around to different cities, and I would do a little pep talk with my team beforehand, and I would like say things like, "We're not here to preach to the choir. We're here to show to the linear-minded people the evidence that we're all interconnected, that we're all one." And that's also my first ever Nassim Harriman video as well. Also spoke about when he was a little child in that bus and he saw the dot and how he went out into the universe and everything became a dot. And then he basically, that was like how he saw that the whole external universe was a reflection of the quantum world. And so I felt like through what he was sharing, and then was the mathematics and the scientific evidence that we're all one, interconnected, right? In this world where we seem so separate, how
Exactly.
can we prove the quantum field that we're all connected? And like I would say, the majority of portal to ascension, we do, like, of course we do meditations and all that stuff, but I love to provide information because we are skeptics at heart. It's like hard for us to believe and doubt, and having this information just fills in the pieces. And it also, because we are basically teaching the teachers. I'm not teaching students, we're teaching the teachers, and the teachers are learning this information and having now their tools in order to basically, if somebody comes to them, to be able to explain what is going on. Because as you just mentioned, the system is collapsing. As the system collapses, we start seeing and exposing the deep underlying secrets of what made this world the way it is, right? And when it comes to 3D, political structure and everything, that's going to blow people's minds. But when it comes to the fact that we're all vibrating frequencies that are holographic projections of consciousness, you know what I'm saying? When it comes to like that understanding, what's it gonna take for people to get to that? So that's why I really appreciate what you're doing, is that you are, in such a beautiful way, bringing this information and bridging the two worlds together, and I think it's incredible. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Neil. I so appreciate it.
Yeah,
And I really, for myself, I would say that many times I'm also a skeptic. Like, it's like one part of me, deeply inside of me, inherently knows, like, whatever is true, right, about the temples or whatever else. But there is a part of me that is like, I want to see it, I want to measure it, I want to
same.
see how it's replicable, if it is, and there is this part of my, I have a pretty overactive mind a lot of times, and this is asking for that kind of food, like the intellectual food, and not only the experiential that is absolutely important. And so in my path, I feel a healthy balance between the two is something that feels very good for me. And we're not all the same. I feel some people are really meant to explore maybe one or the other very deeply, and that's okay. And we're all different and we all have different missions. But I really feel this time in the planet, bringing these two together is ever important, like bridging the masculine and the feminine, science of spirit and spirituality, all these that are just the two sides of the same coin.
Exactly, because there's no judgment on one or the other. You might just be more prone to a belief and a knowingness. You don't know why you even do that. Maybe it's because you're brought up with a lot of faith and belief. Maybe you had a past life like that. Maybe it's not your destiny to learn the information. But there's no reason to judge it, because we all come to our truth in our own way. And what you just shared is perfect, because the masculine and the feminine, not one is better than the other. It's a sacred dance. The two of them coming together creates the oneness. And the masculine energy happens to be informational, analytical, right? Which doesn't have to be judged. And the feminine energy, metaphorical, creative. You know, I love to say that that metaphysics and quantum physics are the same thing. Like metaphysics is metaphorical quantum physics. It's like, and one is the female aspect, and one is the masculine aspect. And as we bring both of these informations out together, people have the opportunity to choose which way they need to basically learn what's going on. And there's a lot of pushback too. I don't know if you've been following a lot of the ancient history debates, Graham Hancock and Joe Rogan with the guy that is debating, other
Of course.
platforms that are going all, the Minuteman on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen him, but this like 20-something-year-old guy that just like dogs on every one of the people that's doing ancient history in our community. And there's a huge, huge push for that. And the way you really have a conversation with these people is through doing the research and being able to provide it and bring it to the table, right? And I think it's healthy for us to have these
You
discussions
know,
in a way where we're not
I wanted
angry
to
at each other.
mention,
Yeah,
yeah, I wanted to mention something on what you said about the word metaphysics, which actually comes from Greek meta and physiki. Meta means
yeah,
one of the ways to approach that is after. And I really believe metaphysics is just the physics we haven't discovered yet. That's all. And magic and all these
yeah.
things. There is physics that governs that. It's just other kind of physics that we haven't really been able to validate with the low level of consciousness we have of
Right.
today. So The same
Yeah.
way, like you get a phone into a person, 300 years ago, and they see someone appearing in the screen and they're like, this is magic. This is, a person that lives on the other side of the world. Like we are connecting with you right now, right? And it's like, how are you doing that? You brought the spirit into this flat thing. And today we just
Yeah.
do that every day without even thinking about that this looks like magic. So now we have the science to make it
Yeah.
happen and to understand it. But some time ago, that would be absolutely considered as metaphysics.
Yeah, you're speaking my language right now. These are the things that I say too. And when someone like my dad, for example, says to me, my dad did a Google search on me like 7 years ago, and he found all this stuff on ETs and UFOs, and he got really angry. He's like, "What's up with all this alien stuff?" I like wanted to choke me. And so then after that, we had some conversations, and he goes, "ETs cannot visit Earth because they're limited by the speed of light." And then my answer was the answer you just gave me. Like, I'm sure 100 years ago, someone would say that we're not being able to project something on a screen to view it because that's like a ghost in a device talking to you, and that's not possible. Something like that. And I feel what's unfortunate is with a lot of things within science, when they come up with conclusions, it becomes a definite conclusion rather than the what science originally was. Science was a philosophy. It was asking questions and being curious and being more open. It's unfortunate that many people have created such academic belief systems and degrees around a knowingness rather than a curiosity for what else is possible. And that's what we need to
We
step
live in a
into, I
time of
feel.
scientism. Like this is the religion we
Yeah.
have today.
Biggest
It's called scientism.
yeah.
We have dogmas in science more than ever before. We are not even allowed to question things. This is how they are, even if there is evidence of the contrary. Even if I had peer-reviewed papers to show to the director of geophysics that water underground can have a charge, I was not even allowed. Like this is the
Yeah.
dogma. It's neutral, period. And so this is what one of the prophecies of Thoth is when he in one of his talks to Asclepius, he says all the fake, let's say, lies and people that are giving that, they will be worshipped as gods, and the real, like, people carrying the truth will be, taken out of society or taken to jail or whatever it is. So everything is inverted. Our test in our times, I feel, is discernment and being able to, even if everything is projected in TV and media, that this is the truth, that this is correct, having the courage to think out of the box that is actually everything or almost everything is inverted. I
Yeah.
think these are the times we're living in.
Yeah. 100%. And we're gonna close out in a minute here, but I just wanted to comment on that really quick. I was just having dinner with someone an hour ago, a friend here, and we were speaking about like how in college, in a lot of ways, that they when you go get a degree and you go to college, in many ways, if you lead with what you learned there and you go within the book and you literally follow the textbook, it almost tries to create a way for you to follow a system that's already been in place for you and doesn't really cultivate thinking outside the box. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you look at all the biggest CEOs and innovators in the world, they all didn't go to college or they dropped out. Not to say that college isn't a beneficial thing, but it's really interesting to note that some of the biggest innovators and creators and CEOs and billionaires in the world were those that thought so out of the box. Many of them didn't even do well in high school, you know? And so the system has been
Absolutely.
designed delusionally. This is how you become really successful, but it's successful within a construct that they've created for you. Yeah, and we're
Absolutely.
breaking free from that now. So, okay, as we close out, would love for you to share maybe a few more sacred sites that blew your mind. Some places in the world that really just resonate with you and this craziness going on over there.
Mexico, there are many sites that are really, they're just incredible. All the Yucatan area for me is like so powerful. There are incredible places like Uxmal and many others around. But the one that I really currently just resonates so much, I went actually with Arturo this March. to Guatemala. It has been my dream for many years, and this place has been calling me so much. And I was there on the 21st of March, which is the equinox. It's actually also my birthday. So we were there in the sunrise on top of one of the biggest pyramids in Tikal, watching the sunrise come out of the jungle, because that temple is aligned with the equinox sunrise. And not only Tikal, but there are so many temples that are not known. And we're actually programming a retreat for next March in the equinox. And there is so much wisdom, and there's so much powerful energy in all these temples in Guatemala that is not known to people. And there is far more to it, even about information about the Atlanteans that went there. And there are writings there that have to do with that. So my heart is absolutely in Guatemala. I mean, there are so many places around the world that I absolutely love, but right now this is where my heart lies. Egypt is always amazing, and there is so much more to explore. Like, you go back and back and back, and another layer is just revealed. But Guatemala is not so known to people, and that's why I'm bringing it forth. And it's an absolutely incredible place, and the Mayan wisdom is still alive there. And the Mayans, the indigenous people, are still there. I was just so blessed to have a Mayan fire ceremony from a indigenous Mayan elder that has been doing that in her family tree for generations, from a shaman to a father to a daughter to whatever. And it was one of the most powerful rituals in my entire life, I have to say. And we're going to be doing that next March. So that's where I am right now, Neil.
That sounds beautiful. Yucatan is my favorite place in the world. Uxmal is my favorite. I spent a lot of time in Uxmal. I lived out there, well, for multiple years in a row. I'd spent some time out there, and Palenque as well. I love, but something about Uxmal,
Amazing.
just like the people there, how it's in the jungle and it's so far away from everything. It's just so beautiful. I haven't spent too much time in Guatemala, but I spent time in Lake Atitlan, and they say that there's a pyramid in the lake there. You heard about that?
There is. We went over there because we had a connection to the diver that discovered it. So he gave us the exact coordinates, and we were able to go exactly on
Wow.
top, and we did a whole Atlantean meditation over there. We gave offerings to the lake, and it was so powerful. We're gonna do that next March.
Wow.
So
Wow. Hey, send me info on that retreat, please. Okay. I might want to go.
we'll do, Neil.
Yeah.
Oh, that will be
Beautiful.
amazing.
I know that would be. All right, Lydia. Thank you so much for being here. And as we close out, I would love for you to just share whatever you feel you want to share with everybody here. You know, maybe what's coming up for you, any words of inspiration, and then where everybody can find more information on you.
So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I so appreciate all your work and all your efforts, and you're so dedicated to this mission of helping people awaken to the big picture and the galactic picture. So thank you so much for that. Our website is geophilia.org. geophilia.org. Geophilia means love for the earth. It's Greek words. And what we do there is we also do holistic architecture. So creating new buildings that are healing, and they're made for bliss and transcendence, replicating all the ancient temple technology. We have courses on the temples. And let's say my mantra that I like to share with people is to return to the temple. And that can happen in many different ways. Go back to the temples, guys. Visit the temples. It's a pilgrimage. It's an external pilgrimage that will eventually lead you to an internal pilgrimage. So all the temple retreats in this time, I think they're more important than ever. And if you can't join one for now, just go by yourself. And if you cannot even go by yourself right now for whatever reason, you have a health issue, you are financially locked in, start to connect with temples just online. Find temples online that you resonate with around the world, study them, connect, print pictures, and just have them there and meditate with it every day. It's equally important. And so that's what I would like to leave you with. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Beautiful, Lydia. Thank you so much for everything. And Thank you for all the work you're doing. Really in alignment with everything you shared, and I'm excited because I feel like that you're at a milestone in your life, from what I can tell, from what you're about to do, that you're about to take things to another level. So I'm just honored that we are connected now, and we're going to collaborate quite a lot in the future. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and close out here and play the trailer for the Glastonbury conference, and we'll be live again sometime soon. I'm going to take a couple of weeks off, and but in the next month, just to kind of let you guys know, we have a different stream going out every day. I did an amazing three-part series with Paul Wallace. That's going to be launching next week, Monday. Honestly, one of the best interviews I've ever done, and I spent like 5 hours editing it with footage. I made it kind of like a documentary interview, and it's just really cool. Where it's called "Was Abraham and Moses Contacted by an Alien?" That's what it's called. So it's really fun. Go ahead and tune into that. And I appreciate you all for being here with me today. I'll go ahead and leave you guys with the Blasphemy trailer, and see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.